My stepson whispered to my wife that he had cut my brakes and would see her at my funeral. I heard him from 12 feet away. Cody thought I had already gone outside. I had returned through the mudroom because I had forgotten the blue closing folder on my desk. The kitchen door was almost shut, but his voice carried through the gap. "It's done," he said. Marissa stood beside the coffee machine in the robe I had bought her for our anniversary. "What's done?" Cody lowered his voice. I cut his brakes. "See you at the funeral." My wife did not scream. She did not slap him, reach for her phone, or ask whether he had lost his mind. She looked toward the hallway and asked, "Did you leave anything that points back to us?" "Dean serviced it last," Cody said. "The invoice is still in the glove compartment." Dean Vance was Cody's biological father. He owned the repair shop that had inspected my car 3 weeks earlier. Cody had not only prepared my death, he had chosen which father would carry the blame. My car keys were in my right hand. Attached to them was the brass tag my father had given me when I opened Bennett Fleet Safety 30 years earlier. Every mile ends at home. My father had operated a towing service. He used to tell me the job was not getting a vehicle moving. The job was getting the person home. Cody believed my final mile would end on a mountain road. I put the keys into my pocket and stepped backward through the mudroom without making a sound. I did not confront them. I did not open the hood, touch the car, or test anything for myself. I walked behind the detached storage building, called emergency services, and reported exactly what I had heard. Then I opened the security application on my phone. The kitchen camera had already uploaded the conversation to encrypted cloud storage. The camera was not hidden. It had been installed above the kitchen entrance after a burglary in our neighborhood, and everyone in the house knew it was there. Whether the audio could later be used in court would be for an attorney to determine. At that moment, it gave the investigators a place to begin. Detective Sarah Keene met me 2 streets away in an unmarked car. She listened once without interrupting, then told me not to return to the house alone. "Do not call them," she said. "Do not tell them you heard anything. And under no circumstances does that vehicle move under its own power. It has not moved. Good. Keep it that way." I looked back toward the roof of my house. If I had not forgotten the blue folder, I would already have been behind the wheel. There had been no instinct, warning light, or last-second mechanical clue. A stack of retirement papers had delayed me by less than a minute, and that minute had placed me outside the kitchen instead of on the mountain road. People later called that lucky. Lucky was too gentle a word for realizing how little had separated an ordinary departure from the funeral my family had already discussed. The police arranged for a flatbed from the towing operator my company used for secured vehicle examinations. 27 minutes later, I watched from the passenger seat of Detective Keene's car as the truck backed into my driveway. The operator never started my engine. He photographed the car where it stood, documented the keys, and lifted it onto the flatbed. Marissa appeared at the kitchen window. Cody stood behind her. My phone rang before the truck reached the end. The driveway. "Russell, what happened?" Marissa asked. Her voice carried exactly the amount of concern I was expected to show when neighbors might be watching. "A warning light came on," I said. I decided not to risk the drive. There was a silence long enough for her to look at Cody. "Where are you taking it?" she asked. "The fleet facility will check it." Cody took the phone from her. "Which facility? Why?" "I can save you the trouble. Dean serviced it recently. I'll call him. No need. The tow is already moving." He tried to sound annoyed. Fear made him speak too quickly. "You were supposed to be on the road before 6. The sentence hung between us. "Plans change," I said. I ended the call. The previous evening, Marissa had asked what time I planned to leave, whether I would take the mountain route, and whether anyone from the company was riding with me. She packed a travel mug and told me the higher road would be faster before commuter traffic began. I had mistaken those questions for the habits of a wife who worried about schedules. From the safety of Detective Keen's car, I heard them differently. Marissa had not merely approved Cody's plan after he made it. She had supplied the departure window and confirmed that I would be alone. For 12 years, I had treated Cody as family. He was 18 when I married Marissa, old enough to resent a second man in his mother's life, and young enough to need one who would keep showing up. I gave him summer work at Bennett Fleet Safety. I paid for 2 certification courses after he quit community college. When he opened Vance Performance Works, I introduced him to lenders, vendors, and commercial clients who trusted my name. I never asked him to call me Dad. He did when he needed a reference. I had still believed there was something real beneath the convenience. 3 days earlier, I would have told anyone Cody was reckless, entitled, and capable of lying about money, but not capable of planning a funeral. Marissa had removed that last defense with one question. Did you leave anything that points back to us? She had not learned about the plan in that kitchen. She was checking whether it had been completed carefully. Detective Keen drove me to the secured examination building, used by my company and local insurers for serious vehicle cases. The irony was not lost on either of us. I had spent more than 30 years teaching transportation companies that a vehicle should never be trusted simply because it had worked the day before. Bennett Fleet Safety inspected trucks and buses, trained drivers, reviewed maintenance programs, and investigated crashes after businesses insisted nothing could have gone wrong. That morning, my own car arrived on a flatbed because the people in my house expected my reputation for safety to make my death look especially cruel. Malcolm Reyes, an independent vehicle examiner, met the tow inside the controlled bay. He had worked with my company before, but Detective Keen made the roles clear. This was now a police inquiry. Malcolm would document the vehicle under her evidence protocol, and I would remain outside the examination area. I handed over the keys. The brass tag rested in Malcolm's gloved palm. "Every mile ends at home," he read. "My father gave me that." Malcolm looked at the car on the flatbed. "Then he gave you good advice." Detective Keen took my statement while the examination began. I told her about the mountain route, the preliminary company signing, and the fact that Marissa knew when I planned to leave and that I would be driving alone. "Who benefits if you die today?" she asked. "My wife under the current estate plan. Possibly Cody through her. Anything happening at the company that changes their position." I looked at the blue folder I had gone back to retrieve. An independent audit starts this week. That audit was the reason I had planned the mountain trip. Bennett Fleet Safety was preparing for its 30th anniversary and my retirement. The company had been valued at approximately $5,800,000. Marissa assumed retirement meant a family succession. Cody had begun speaking at meetings as though an executive title was only waiting for my signature. I had not promised him one. For 18 months, our chief financial officer, Joanna Price, had been questioning payments to Cody's failing performance garage. The first invoices appeared ordinary: technical consulting, parts procurement, storage, vehicle modifications. The work behind them was harder to find. Joanna identified reports that did not exist, parts no employee remembered receiving, and repairs our own technicians had performed while Cody's company submitted the bill. Some payments carried Marissa's administrative approval. The total under review was approximately $186,000. I had not accused either of them. I announced an independent audit and paused every succession discussion until the records could be verified. 3 days later, Cody cut my brakes. "Do they know you found the invoices?" Detective Keen asked. "They know I found enough to start looking, and your death could stop the audit. It could delay it. Marissa would gain influence under the old estate structure. Cody believes she could place him inside the company." The detective closed her notebook. Surviving the car is only the first problem. Now we have to survive what they do when they realize it failed. She contacted Helen Park, my corporate and estate attorney, from the examination facility. Helen arrived within an hour and listened to the kitchen recording through headphones. When Cody said he would see Marissa at my funeral, Helen did not change expression. When Marissa asked whether he had left evidence, Helen removed the headphones. "Your wife is not a frightened mother reacting badly to a son's confession," she said. "That question makes her part of the plan. Can the recording be used? I will review the local consent rules. We will not build everything on one recording. Your direct account, the vehicle, access records, financial motive, and their communications matter independently." She opened my blue folder. Inside were draft documents connected to my retirement and the preliminary ownership transition. "Nothing gets signed today," she said. "Company access will be preserved before anyone realizes why." Joanna received instructions to secure the accounting system, vendor files, and approval history without notifying Marissa. Helen paused every document that could have given Marissa or Cody influence over the business. Detective Keene requested preservation of the home camera data and the external cameras covering my garage. I was moved to a company apartment used for visiting clients. Only Helen, Joanna, the detective, and the building manager knew I was there. Marissa called 9 times before noon. Her messages moved from concern to irritation. "Please call me. I'm worried. Cody says Dean should inspect the car. Why won't you tell us where it is? We need to know whether you are still signing today." The last question told the truth more clearly than the first 8. At 1:15, Cody left a message of his own. "Russell, this is getting ridiculous. If there is a brake issue, my dad's shop needs to see it. He serviced the car last. You should not let some outside examiner blame the wrong person." He was already guiding the story toward Dean. Detective Keene preserved the voicemail. Malcolm completed his preliminary examination late that afternoon. He met us in a conference room without bringing photographs of internal components. The details belonged in a controlled report, not in a family conversation. "This was not wear, neglect, or a failed repair," he said. "Someone deliberately made the vehicle unsafe after its last documented service." "Would it have been dangerous on the mountain route?" Detective Keene asked. "It was unsafe to operate anywhere. The route would have increased the risk of fatal result." "Can you determine whether Dean's service caused it?" "The records and condition indicate the deliberate interference occurred afterward. Nothing I have seen supports blaming the prior maintenance. Dean did not know it yet, but the first examination had already begun clearing his name. I thought of Cody's surprise when he saw me outside the kitchen. "You planned my funeral before you checked whether I had left the house." I did not say it to him that day. The investigation needed silence more than my anger needed an answer. The same finding turned Cody's kitchen words into something more than an ugly boast. The vehicle had been deliberately sabotaged. He knew my departure time. Marissa knew I would be alone. They had selected Dean's invoice before I ever reached the driveway. I placed my keys on the conference table. The brass tag caught the fluorescent light. "Every mile ends at home." For 30 years, I had built a company around bringing drivers home safely. That morning, a tow truck had done the same for me before I traveled a single mile. At 6 that evening, Detective Keene received confirmation that the kitchen footage and the exterior profiles had been preserved. No one at the house could erase the cloud copies. Malcolm sealed the vehicle inside the examination bay, and the tow operator's photographs established that it had left my driveway untouched. Marissa and Cody still believed a warning light had interrupted their plan. They believed the car might return before anyone understood what had happened. They believed Dean's invoice was still waiting in the glove compartment to become their explanation. Cody believed the tow truck had saved me by accident. He did not know it had carried the first piece of evidence away before he could return to destroy it. The morning after my stepson tried to send me down a mountain without brakes, my wife asked whether I still planned to put him in charge of my company. Marissa left the question in the middle of a message about my health. Please tell me where you are. Cody and I are worried. We also need to know whether the succession meeting will be rescheduled. She had listened to her son plan my funeral, then returned to the promotion she thought my death had guaranteed him. I read the message from the company apartment where Detective Sarah Keene had placed me for safety. The curtains were closed. My car remained sealed inside the examination facility. Marissa and Cody still believed a warning light had interrupted an ordinary trip. They did not know Malcolm Reyes had confirmed deliberate sabotage. They did not know the kitchen recording had been preserved. And they did not know the audit they wanted to bury with me had already begun moving faster. Joanna Price, the chief financial officer of Bennett Fleet Safety, arrived before 7 with 2 encrypted drives and 18 months of vendor records. Helen Park, my attorney, joined us by secure video. Joanna had been questioning Cody's invoices for weeks. My announcement of an independent audit had given her authority to stop treating each irregular payment as an isolated mistake. She placed the first summary on the table, $186,000. That was how much Bennett Fleet Safety had paid to Cody's failing garage through consulting contracts, non-existent parts, false storage charges, and repairs our own employees had performed. Cody's company was not working for Bennett Fleet Safety, Joanna said. Bennett Fleet Safety was quietly paying for Cody's company to stay alive. The invoices followed a pattern. Cody submitted a charge through Vance Performance Works. A vendor coordinator entered it. Marissa approved it as administrative manager, or forwarded it with a note that the work was urgent. The payment cleared before anyone asked for a report, delivery receipt, or vehicle number. Some invoices claimed Cody had supplied specialized components. Our inventory showed nothing arriving. Others billed for test vehicles that did not exist. One consulting agreement required monthly safety reports. Joanna could not find a single report. How many did Marissa approve, I asked. Directly, 74,000. Another 51,000 moved after she told staff the invoices had your verbal approval. They did not. I know. Joanna turned the laptop toward me. One of Marissa's messages said Cody's company should be treated as a strategic family vendor while succession planning was underway. She had used a future I never promised to justify money he had not earned. Detective Keene did not treat the audit as proof of the attempted killing. She treated it as motive that had to be supported by independent evidence. What changes if you live and complete the audit? She asked. Cody loses access, faces repayment, and receives no company position. Marissa loses her administrative authority and probably her marriage. What changes if you die under the old documents? Helen answered. Marissa receives substantial marital assets, temporary influence through the estate structure, and a possible life insurance payment. The audit could be delayed while control is disputed. Cody had apparently translated delay into erasure. What he did not know was that my original retirement plan had never placed Bennett Fleet Safety in his hands. For 30 years, mechanics, trainers, inspectors, and investigators had built the company beside me. Some had stayed through recessions, insurance losses, and the year a major client nearly took us down with unpaid invoices. They were the reason the business was worth approximately $5,800,000. My proposed transition placed 70% of the company into an employee ownership trust. 20% would support my retirement, and 10% would fund professional safety training. Marissa remained protected by lawful marital assets and retirement support. Cody did not receive automatic shares or an executive chair. That difference had become a wound neither of them believed I was allowed to create. Marissa called the trust a gift to strangers. Cody said employees could quit whenever they wanted. While family remained after everyone else left, the people he called strangers had worked night shifts after fatal crashes, driven through snow to inspect stranded buses, and stayed beside me when the company could barely meet payroll. Cody had submitted invoices to those same people for work he never performed. He did not want to continue what we had built. He wanted the authority attached to its value. Helen had not yet completed the trust because I wanted the audit resolved first. After the kitchen recording, she froze every old succession draft and moved the employee transaction into protected review. Surviving does not mean they inherit another opportunity, she said. Joanna closed Marissa's accounting access under the audit policy. Vendor payments to Vance Performance Works were suspended. Copies of the approval trail went into a secured archive before either of them learned the system had changed. By noon, Cody had tried to log in 4 times. He called me immediately afterward. Joanna locked Mom out of the vendor portal. The audit is active. You said the car had a warning light. What does that have to do with invoices? Nothing. The audit was already scheduled. He was quiet for a moment. Did the examiner find anything? The report is not complete. You should let Dean see the car before some outsider writes something irresponsible. You seem very concerned about your father. He did the last service. I am protecting him. That was the first time Cody described framing Dean as protection. Detective Keene preserved the call log and instructed me not to answer further questions about the vehicle. People who believed their plan had failed by accident often tried to correct the story before they tried anything else. The garage evidence arrived that afternoon. Dean Vance operated a modest repair shop with 6 service bays and exterior cameras covering the lot. He and I were not friends. He believed I had been too strict with Cody. I believed Dean had spent years paying debts that his son needed to feel. 3 weeks earlier, Dean's garage had performed routine service on my car. His records showed it left without the condition. Malcolm later found the important footage came from my own property first. An exterior camera showed Cody entering my detached garage late Monday night. He stayed inside for 11 minutes. I had not asked him to be there. The local camera file had been deleted the following morning. The cloud backup remained. It did not show how the vehicle had been sabotaged. It did not need to. It placed Cody alone with the car during the only unexplained access window, hours before he told Marissa the work was done. When Detective Keene obtained preservation authority for Cody's messages, another part of the plan appeared. He leaves before 6. Make sure he drives alone. Dean's invoice is still in the glove compartment. After the funeral, we stopped the audit. Marissa had supplied my schedule. Cody had confirmed the alibi. Both had discussed the audit as something my death would end. Helen read the messages twice. This is why you do not confront them, she said. Every hour they believe the vehicle suffered an ordinary problem is another hour they leave their own records where investigators can preserve them. Dean entered the case because Cody became impatient. The day after the tow, Cody sent his father a message. If anyone asks, tell them you checked the brake system during Russell's last service. Dean replied that he would say only what his records showed. Cody called him twice, then left a voicemail. Dad, stick to the story. You checked everything. Do not let Russell's people make this your fault. Dean did not yet know what this meant, but he knew his son was asking for a statement the service file did not support. He saved the voicemail and every message. Detective Keene interviewed him at the garage. He began by defending Cody. He is reckless, Dean said. He borrows money and makes promises he cannot keep. That does not make him a killer. No one asked you to call him one, the detective replied. We asked why he wanted you to alter a maintenance record. Dean had no answer. For most of Cody's adult life, Dean and I had taken turns softening the ground beneath him. Dean paid personal debts. I gave him contracts and introductions. When one of us finally said no, Cody went to the other and described himself as misunderstood. We had disagreed about which man was helping and which was enabling him. Neither of us had asked what Cody learned from always having a second father available to absorb the cost of his choices. The message about my breaks answered that question. He had learned that consequences were real, but he still believed they should belong to someone else. He surrendered the full service file, appointment logs, and camera archive. His footage showed Cody visiting the garage 2 days before my planned trip and asking an employee where completed invoices were stored. The employee assumed he was collecting paperwork for his mother. Dean had unknowingly shown his son exactly which document could be used against him. Malcolm's final preliminary report separated the service from the sabotage. The condition was deliberate. It appeared after Dean's work. Nothing supported natural wear, neglect, or a failed repair. Once the relevant evidence had been documented, removed, and sealed under police control, the remaining vehicle was rendered completely inoperable. Detective Keene needed a secure storage site with continuous camera coverage while the investigation continued. Dean's garage met the requirements. He was not permitted to inspect, repair, or move the vehicle. The police evidence seal remained under official control. His role was storage and access documentation, nothing more. I asked Helen whether I could send him a copy of the information that cleared his service. With Keene's approval, she said, do not threaten him and do not ask him to investigate. I wrote 4 words on the outside of an envelope, a gift from your son. Inside was a notice identifying the car as secured evidence. The examiner's conclusion that the sabotage occurred after Dean's service, a copy of Cody's request that he lie, and Detective Keene's number. The car arrived at Dean's secured storage bay on a police-approved flatbed. He saw the envelope and called me before opening it. What kind of game is this, Russell? Open it. Are you accusing my son? Your son already used your name. Read what he wanted it to carry. Dean opened the envelope while Detective Keene stood nearby. I listened through the call as pages moved across his desk. He stopped when he reached Cody's message. If anyone asks, tell them you checked the brake system. Then he read Malcolm's conclusion. The deliberate interference occurred after the last documented service. Dean looked through the office window at the disabled car. His son had expected everyone to blame on him. He did not only expect you to die, he said. He expected me to live with everyone believing I caused it. For years, Dean had paid Cody's overdue rent, answered customer complaints, and called his worst choices mistakes. He had told me more than once that Cody was reckless, not evil. The car in his storage bay made that defense impossible. I spent years protecting my son from consequences, Dean said. He thanked me by choosing me to carry his. He gave Detective Keene the saved voicemail, the full message thread, and written permission to preserve the garage camera files. He also identified a second phone number Cody used for business communications. That number helped investigators obtain a broader search warrant. What they found on Marissa's laptop was quieter than the kitchen recording and somehow colder. The file was named Russell Memorial Remarks. It had been created before the morning my car was sabotaged. The opening lines praised my life's work in vehicle safety and described the tragedy of losing me in an accident involving the very thing I had spent my career preventing. One sentence said Marissa would continue the legacy Russell had entrusted to his family. Another promised that Cody would honor me by helping guide the company into its next generation. She had assigned my company before anyone had identified my body. Marissa had prepared the words she would use to mourn me before she knew whether Cody's plan had worked. She had written herself as the grieving widow. While I was still asleep down the hall, Dean remained beside the sealed car after Detective Keene finished collecting his records. Why send it here? He asked me. Because Cody had already put your name inside the accident. You deserve to see what he intended before someone else told you what to believe. Dean looked at the envelope again. That note called it a gift. The car was not the gift. The truth was, Dean had spent 30 years saving his son from consequences. The car in his garage showed him the final consequence Cody had chosen for both of his fathers. My wife had already written my funeral speech, so I let her write one more speech about the company she thought my death would give her. Marissa believed I had never seen the first document. She believed the file named Russell Memorial Remarks was still private on her laptop. She did not know investigators had preserved its creation date, or that Helen Park had read the lines assigning my legacy to Marissa and Cody before my sabotaged car ever left the driveway. I did not tell her silence was no longer hesitation. It was the space the investigation needed to collect everything they would destroy if they knew I had heard the kitchen conversation. For 4 days, I remained in the secured company apartment. Detective Sarah Keene approved every contact. I did not return home, meet Cody alone, or place myself near another vehicle he could access. Marissa told friends I was resting after a mechanical scare. Cody called it a near miss, neither used the word sabotage. On the 5th morning, Marissa asked for a video call. She appeared from our kitchen, seated beneath the camera that had recorded her, asking whether Cody had left evidence. "You cannot stay away forever," she said. "Whatever is wrong with the car, Dean should be allowed to correct it. The examiner is still working. Has he found anything? He has not released a final report to me." That answer was true. It simply left out the preliminary conclusion that someone had deliberately made the car unsafe after Dean's service. "Cody is worried people will blame him because he was at the house," she said. "Why would anyone blame Cody?" Her eyes moved away from the screen. "I mean, for the invoices. Joanna has frozen everything, and now rumors are starting. The audit will answer the rumors. Russell, you could destroy his life over accounting mistakes. I was going to audit everything he took." She flinched at the past tense. I let the silence remain long enough for her to supply hope. "Nearly getting on that road made me think about succession," I said. "The company needs a clear future. I will announce it at the 30th anniversary dinner." Marissa leaned closer. "A family future. I want everyone who matters to hear it together." I did not promise her control. I did not offer Cody a title. She heard both because entitlement translated every unfinished sentence into inheritance. "Then let Cody speak," she said. "Let people see that you trust him. He can prepare remarks." Marissa smiled for the first time since the tow truck left our driveway. I had known that smile for 12 years. It appeared when a closing went through, when Cody escaped a debt, and when she believed a difficult conversation had ended in her favor. I once read it as relief because marriage had trained me to search her face for the kindest explanation. Now I knew she could wear the same smile after asking whether her son had left evidence of my planned death. The hardest part of pretending was not controlling my anger. It was speaking to her without mourning the woman I had believed was on the other side of the screen. Detective Keene had listened from the adjoining room. After the call ended, she closed her notebook. She never asked whether the vehicle was safe to drive again. She asked whether the examiner found anything. That is not the same question. The anniversary dinner had been scheduled months earlier. 180 employees, clients, insurance partners, and board members were expected. Its purpose was to honor Sabotage and announce the employee ownership transition. We were not creating a party to trap my family. We were refusing to let their crime cancel a company event that belonged to people who had done nothing wrong. Helen made the conditions clear. I would arrive through a secured entrance. Company security and police would control access. Marissa and Cody would not be allowed near my transportation. If a judge approved warrants before the dinner, Detective Keene would determine when and where they could be executed safely. I would announce company decisions. I would not conduct a criminal trial from the stage, while Marissa and Cody prepared speeches. Helen completed the ownership transaction. They believed my death would stop. 70% of Bennett Fleet Safety transferred into an employee ownership trust. 20% remained in my retirement trust. 10% funded training for commercial vehicle inspectors and mechanics. The employee trustees could not sell the business for a quick payout. Voting rules protected operations, jobs, and long-term safety standards. Joanna Price remained Chief Financial Officer, and a professional board would supervise the transition. The signatures came from employees who understood what ownership cost. One had begun as a 19-year-old inspection assistant. Another had spent 22 years training school bus drivers. A third had once slept in the office during an ice storm so stranded clients could reach someone through the night. None shared my name. All had carried the company when Cody treated it as a bank account. I signed the final transfer with my father's brass key tag beside the documents. For the first time since the kitchen, I felt I was protecting something rather than merely surviving someone. Cody received no executive role. Marissa received no financial signature authority. The company had stayed with family. I had finally recognized which people had spent 30 years acting like one. Helen also updated my estate plan. Marissa's lawful marital rights would be handled through divorce and property law, not erased by a dramatic signature. But she no longer had a path to company control, and Cody could not enter management through her. My life insurance beneficiary designations were suspended pending legal review. Emergency powers were transferred to independent professionals. Every document that once assumed my wife would protect my interests now reflected what she had done when she believed I would not survive the morning. Joanna completed the financial audit 2 days before the dinner. The total remained approximately $186,000. The evidence was simple enough that no one needed to understand accounting theory. Cody's company billed for work it did not perform. Marissa approved payments she knew were unsupported. Bennett Fleet Safety funded the garage while Cody prepared to inherit the business that had kept it alive. Joanna organized the result into 4 examples for the board. A consulting contract with no reports, components that were never delivered, storage for vehicles that did not exist, repairs already completed by our own employees. Do not give them 20 pages when 4 invoices tell the truth, she said. Helen preserved the complete report for court. The anniversary audience would hear only what was necessary to explain why Cody and Marissa had lost company authority. The criminal evidence continued developing separately. Malcolm Reyes finalized his vehicle report. It confirmed deliberate interference after Dean's documented service and stated that the car had been unsafe to operate. Dean's records removed the maintenance failure Cody had planned to use as his explanation. The exterior camera placed Cody inside my garage during the unexplained access window. The cloud backup proved someone had deleted the local clip afterward. Dean voluntarily gave Detective Keene the message asking him to claim he had inspected the brake system. He also preserved Cody's voicemail, telling him to stick to the story, meet your authority, produced the conversation between Cody and Marissa about my departure time, the route, the invoice, and stopping the audit after my funeral. The same records showed Cody researching accident insurance, surviving spouse control, garage liability, and whether a forensic audit would continue after an owner died. Nothing described how he damaged the vehicle. The searches showed what he expected to happen afterward. The kitchen recording remained only one piece. Helen confirmed it could be used as an investigative lead under local rules, while prosecutors evaluated how much could later be presented. The case did not depend on it alone. Vehicle evidence showed the act. Camera footage showed access. Moms showed planning. The audit showed motive. Dean showed whom Cody intended to blame. Detective Keene submitted the package for judicial review. She did not promise an arrest date or tell me what a judge would decide. The dinner does not control the warrant, she said. The evidence does. If approval comes before the event, we know where both suspects will be and can act without sending officers into a private house. Marissa and Cody believed the same dinner would give them everything. Cody requested a private rehearsal in my office. Detective Keene allowed a monitored meeting in the company conference room with security outside. He arrived wearing the navy suit I had bought him for his first major client presentation. Mom says you want me to speak about succession. I want you to speak about what the company means to you. And then you announce the operations role. I will announce the future of Bennett Fleet Safety. He smiled as though those were identical promises. I knew the car scare would make you see what matters. It did. Family should not have to fight employees for what belongs to them. Then explain that in your speech. He opened a draft on his tablet. Russell taught me that safety is not a procedure. It is a promise. The sentence was polished, memorable, and stolen from training language my employees had developed years before Cody joined the company. Keep it, I said. I wanted the people who had lived that promise to hear him claim it before they learned what he had done to my car. Cody lowered the tablet. Did Dean say anything about the service? You have asked about the car in every conversation. Because I care whether you are safe. You knew I was supposed to leave before 6. His expression tightened. Mom told me. Of course she did. He left without asking where I had been sleeping. Marissa sent me her own speech that evening. It praised trust, loyalty, and the family willing to carry a company forward. She thanked herself for standing beside me during 3 decades she had only witnessed for 12 years. The final paragraph said she looked forward to supporting Cody as he continued Russell's mission. She had written my retirement as a softer version of the funeral speech. In both documents, I disappeared and she explained what should happen to everything behind me. Dean resisted appearing at the anniversary dinner. I gave Keene the records, he told me. I do not want to stand in a ballroom while you humiliate my son. I am not asking you to humiliate him. Then why do you need me there? Because he chose your name before he chose the road. If he tells 180 people that the car suffered a maintenance failure, your silence becomes part of his story. Dean looked through the window of his office toward the secured storage bay. My disabled car remained behind an evidence seal. I kept calling him reckless because evil would have meant admitting what my son had become. You do not have to decide what he is. Tell the truth about what he asked you to do. Dean agreed to attend. He would enter only when Detective Keene told him the evidence and safety plan allowed it. On the afternoon of the dinner, Joanna showed me the final program, 30 years of bringing people home safely. The phrase had been chosen before anyone knew what Cody had done. It came from the lesson my father repeated beside every disabled truck he pulled from a road. A successful job ended with a person returning home, not with a vehicle returning to service. That principle had built my company. It had also saved my life when I chose a flatbed instead of trying to prove my car could still move. My father's brass key tag rested in my palm. Every mile ends at home. The car Cody tried to turn into a weapon remained disabled in Dean's garage. The relevant evidence had been sealed elsewhere. My new transportation arrived with a professional driver and a security escort. Inside the event hall, Marissa arranged place cards as though she already represented the next generation of ownership. Cody practiced his speech near the stage. Neither knew the employee trustees had signed the final acceptance documents that morning. Neither knew Detective Keene had received a sealed call from the court. Guests filled the room. Longtime inspectors sat beside dispatch managers and accident investigators. Clients who had trusted us for decades stood beneath photographs of the first trucks my father and I had serviced. Marissa raised her glass before dinner. To trust, she said, to loyalty, and to the family that will carry Bennett Fleet Safety forward. Cody lifted his glass beside her. They were preparing to inherit a company while investigators were preparing to ask why its owner had been scheduled to die. At the back of the room, the man their plan had chosen to blame reached for the door. Marissa was still smiling when Dean Vance stepped inside. The man Cody planned to frame walked into the anniversary dinner carrying an envelope labeled, "A gift from your son." Dean Vance did not approach the stage. He took a seat near the back beside Detective Sarah Keene and placed the envelope on the table in front of him. Cody saw his father immediately. The glass in his hand stopped halfway to his mouth. Marissa followed his stare, but 180 employees and clients were already watching her. She recovered first. She raised her glass higher and continued the toast she believed would introduce our family succession. No company survives 30 years without trust, loyalty, and the family willing to carry it forward. She smiled toward me. Russell built Bennett Fleet Safety from one inspection contract and a promise that every driver deserved to come home. Cody and I are honored to help protect that promise through the next generation. Applause moved politely through the room. Marissa had approved false invoices, supplied my departure time, and written my funeral speech. Now she stood beneath a banner about bringing people home safely and asked my employees to admire her loyalty. Cody stepped to the microphone in the navy suit I had bought him. Russell taught me that safety is not a procedure. It is a promise. He thanked his mother for believing in him and described Bennett Fleet Safety as a family business ready for younger leadership. He spoke about innovation, growth, and the responsibility of carrying a founder's name forward. He did not mention the employees who had built the company. He did not mention the audit. He did not look at Dean again. When Cody finished, he extended one hand toward me as though inviting me to confirm his promotion. I carried my father's brass key tag to the podium. Every mile ends at home. 30 years ago, my father told me a towing job was not finished when a vehicle moved. It was finished when the person came home. I looked across the room at inspectors, trainers, dispatchers, mechanics, and investigators who had lived that principle longer than Cody had worked for me. Bennett Fleet Safety has always been a family business. I was simply wrong about which people had acted like family. The screen behind me displayed the Employee Ownership Trust. 70% of the company now belonged to the Employee Trust. 20% remained in my retirement trust. 10% funded professional safety training. Joanna Price would remain Chief Financial Officer, and an independent board would protect the transition. Cody had no executive appointment. Marissa had no financial authority. The employees who had helped create $5,800,000 in value now owned the largest share of what they had built. The reaction was not the celebration Marissa had expected for Cody. Several longtime employees simply looked at one another, trying to understand that the ownership announcement was real. A senior inspector near the front covered his mouth. 2 training managers clasped hands beneath the table. They had spent years assuming retirement would bring an outside buyer or a family successor who had never shared their work. The trust meant the company's future would be decided by people who understood why its standards mattered. Cody stepped toward me. "You said the company would stay with family." It did. I finally recognized the people who spent 30 years acting like one. Marissa's smile disappeared. "Russell, this is not the announcement we discussed. We never discussed giving either of you the company. You discussed it with each other." Joanna joined me at the podium with a 4-page audit summary. She did not bury the room in accounting language. She showed 4 invoices, a consulting contract with no reports. Components that were never delivered, distorted for vehicles that did not exist, repairs our own employees had already completed. All 4 led to Vance Performance Works. The complete audit traced approximately $186,000 to Cody's business. Marissa had directly approved $74,000 and pushed additional invoices through by claiming I had authorized them verbally. Cody's company was not working for Bennett Fleet Safety, Joanna said. Bennett Fleet Safety was quietly paying for Cody's company to stay alive. Marissa reached for the microphone. This is a family accounting issue. It stopped being an accounting issue when you and Cody decided the person conducting the audit should not survive the drive, I said. Cody looked toward the exit. 2 plainclothes officers were already standing near it. Dean rose at the back of the room and carried the envelope to the stage. A gift from your son. Cody did not touch it. Dad, whatever Russell told you, he is trying to destroy us. Dean opened the envelope himself. You asked me to tell investigators that I checked Russell's brake system during the last service. I was protecting your shop. My records did not say what you wanted me to claim. Dean read Cody's preserved message aloud. If anyone asks, tell them you checked the brake system during the last service. Then he repeated the voicemail Cody had left after Dean refused. Stick to the story. Cody's face lost its color. He did not only expect Russell to die, Dean said. He expected me to live with everyone believing I caused it. I gave the room only the conclusion of the independent vehicle report. The car had been deliberately made unsafe after it left Dean's shop. It was not wear, neglect, or a failed repair. Cody had entered my garage during the unexplained access window. The local camera clip was deleted, but its cloud backup remained. The car was towed untouched the following morning. You planned my funeral before you checked whether I had left the driveway. You cannot prove what I did in that garage. The investigators do not have only the garage. I did not ask Detective Keene to present a criminal case to 180 guests. I repeated only the kitchen words I had personally heard. Cody said, I cut his brakes. See you at the funeral, Marissa asked. Did you leave anything that points back to us? Cody answered. Dean serviced it last. Marissa shook her head. That conversation is being twisted. Then tell everyone which part of planning my funeral I misunderstood. You were going to destroy everything Cody had. I was going to audit everything he took. He made a terrible mistake because you left him no future. You supplied my route, confirmed I would be alone, and asked whether he had left evidence. The final company record needed only one line on the screen, Russell Memorial Remarks. Created before the sabotage, it described my death as a vehicle accident and assigned my legacy to Marissa and Cody. You had written what you would say about loving me after I could no longer correct you. Cody stepped toward me. You were going to leave me with nothing. I gave you work, credit, introductions, and chances. You confused not everything with nothing. He pointed toward Dean. He never cared what happened to me. Dean's answer was quiet. I cared so much I spent years taking the consequences out of your hands. That is how you learned they always belonged to someone else. 2 fathers had spent years giving Cody another chance. He had chosen one to die and the other to carry the blame. I sent the car to Dean because you had already chosen him as your alibi. The car was not the gift. The truth was. That was as far as the company proceeding went. Detective Keene stepped forward with the court-authorized warrants. The underlying criminal evidence remained with investigators and would be tested in court, not projected across the ballroom. Cody and Marissa were informed of the allegations and their rights. The officers took them into custody separately, without turning the dinner into a spectacle. No one applauded. The lack of sound mattered. Some employees had known Cody since he was 18. They had trained him, covered his mistakes, and attended the opening of his garage. Marissa had approved their holiday schedules and sat beside their families at company picnics. They were not watching strangers receive consequences. They were watching familiar people become impossible to defend. My employees watched in the kind of silence that follows a crash after the noise has ended. They had come to celebrate 30 years of safety and had learned that my own family expected me to become an accident report. Joanna addressed them after the officers left. The company remained operational. Payroll, contracts, inspections, and client services were protected by the employee trust. Marissa and Cody's access had already been disabled. Dean remained beside the empty chair where his son had been sitting. I kept calling him reckless because evil would have meant admitting what my son had become. He said. I looked at the envelope between us. You do not have to name what he is tonight. I should have stopped making excuses years ago. You did what fathers do. You kept believing there was still a line he would not cross. Dean looked toward the brass tag in my hand. There wasn't. There was. He crossed it. The anniversary dinner ended without music. Employees collected their coats quietly. The ownership documents remained valid, and the company continued the next morning. The criminal case took longer. 11 months later, Cody entered a plea covering attempted murder, deliberate vehicle tampering, conspiracy, and financial fraud. Marissa faced conspiracy and fraud charges supported by her messages, approvals, schedule information, and the memorial file. Her case ended through a separate plea without the public performance she had once prepared for my funeral. The court determined restitution and other consequences. I did not choose the sentences, and I did not pretend a plea explained why a wife could hear her husband's death discussed over coffee and ask only about evidence. My divorce from Marissa became final during that period. Lawful marital property was handled through the court. She received no control over Bennett Fleet safety, and Cody had no path into the employee trust. Vance Performance Works closed. Restitution was ordered for the approximately $186,000 taken from my company. Dean kept his garage and professional license. The service records and independent examinations established that his work had not caused the condition of my car. The employee trust completed its first year with Joanna as Chief Financial Officer. I retired from daily management but stayed as a safety advisor. The first training grant funded certifications for mechanics who could not afford them on their own owner. SHIP did not make every quarter easy. The trustees had to renegotiate 2 contracts and explain the criminal case to insurers and clients. But no major customer left, and no employee lost a job because Cody had treated the company as something waiting to be inherited. At the first employee-owner meeting, a mechanic who had been with me for 26 years said the trust did not feel like receiving a gift. It felt like being recognized for work everyone had already done. That was exactly what I had intended. Dean and I met at his garage after the cases moved beyond the plea stage. My old car remained part of the evidence process and was never returned to the road. Dean had never inspected or repaired it. He had only stored the disabled shell under official instructions until it was moved. "Why did you send it here instead of letting the police call me?" he asked. "Because Cody had already put your name inside the accident. You deserve to see what he intended before someone else told you what to believe." Dean turned the envelope over in his hands. That note said it was a gift. The truth was the gift. It did not feel like one. Some truths bring a man home by showing him where he can no longer live. Dean placed the envelope in a locked drawer. He did not forgive Cody. Neither did I. Consequences were no longer something either father could remove from his hands. I bought another car, but did not immediately drive long routes alone. Knowing the danger was gone did not stop my foot from tightening whenever a road began to descend. I worked with a therapist. I rode with professional drivers. I learned that surviving an act and feeling safe after it were different kinds of recovery. Before my first solo trip, Joanna met me in the company lot. I attached my father's brass tag to the new keys. "Every mile ends at home." "Are you sure you want to drive?" she asked. I looked toward the road beyond the gate. Not every road is dangerous because one person tried to make it the last. The engine started normally. I sat for a moment with both hands on the wheel. Cody believed home was where people waited to inherit what belonged to me. My father had taught me something different. Home was the place you worked to bring people back to safely. That morning, a tow truck brought me home before I ever left. The rest of the journey was learning which people no longer belonged there. If your stepson planned your funeral and your wife helped him prepare it, could you ever forgive either of them? Or should some betrayals permanently end the meaning of family?